Hey, welcome back to the Art of Espousing podcast. Lisa and I are so excited to dive into today's episode because we're tackling something that impacts every marriage: communication roadblocks.
That's right. Communication is a heartbeat of a healthy marriage, but let's be honest, it is not always easy.
It's true.
Sometimes we walk away from conversations feeling frustrated, disconnected, or even confused about how things just got off track, and often very emotional.
That's true.
All that. If you've ever wondered what just happened in that whole conversation, you're not alone.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Espousing podcast. We're James and Lisa, and we're excited you're here with us.
If you're just tuning in, our goal is simple: to help turn your marriage into the masterpiece it was meant to be. We know that strong marriages don't just happen by accident. They take work, intentionality, and a whole lot of grace.
So each week we bring encouragement, practical tools, and a little bit of fun to help your relationship grow and thrive. Let's dive into today's conversation. I want to make sure you know about the weekly practice. Every Monday, we send out an email with a short thought and a practice that you and your spouse can implement during the week. We also give updates on new podcast episodes and upcoming events and promotions. You can sign up for the weekly practice by texting the letters AOS to the number 66866. Again, text the letters AOS to 66866. You'll be prompted for your email address, and next Monday, you'll receive your first installment of the weekly practice.
You know what? I have had so many people come up to me and say this has been so helpful to them.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I thought of this idea and get it out weekly.
You did.
James, you thought of this idea and you get it out weekly.
No, we think of it together.
We do. That's great.
Okay, so earlier in December, we shared an episode that introduced the idea of maximizing momentum in your marriage. And we talked about focusing on 5 key priorities: communication, partnership, purpose, commitment, and growth. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to it. But we talked about those priorities, how they work together like a flywheel, building energy and connection as you invest intentionally in each area.
I love it. I'm so excited about this, unpacking these. We shared practical ways to build trust, stay aligned, and support each other's growth. One of the key takeaways was how important communication is. It is foundational in holding everything together. If your communication isn't healthy, it is hard to make progress in other priorities.
It's true.
Communication crosses over to all areas of our married lives. And so when it's not good, lots of things are not good.
Right. And that's why today we're zooming in on communication. Specifically, we want to talk about 5 of the most common roadblocks couples face when trying to communicate effectively. And of course, we'll give you tools to navigate those challenges so you can grow stronger as a team.
You know what, James? I feel like when we give real life examples, people realize, see, we're not as bad as they are.
They're pretty screwed up.
They are. We are going to give some real life examples, some of our own marriage mishaps and practical steps we take to improve communication, and share them with you. So if you're ready to break through some of those barriers and build a deeper connection, let's get started.
Yeah. So the first roadblock we want to talk about is distracted listening. This happens when one or both spouses aren't fully present. You know, maybe one of you is multitasking on your phone or just mentally checked out.
Yeah, I totally resonate. I'm cleaning dishes and I'm listening to you, but I'm not listening to you. We've all been there. You're nodding along saying, but your spouse can tell you're really tuned out, and it leaves them feeling unimportant and unheard. And unfortunately, sometimes we miss a detail that actually causes us not to show up on time.
Yeah.
Or be confused about a calendar invite.
Yeah, that's true.
That causes a lot of havoc. Yeah.
This is such a simple but common roadblock, and it really comes down to just prioritizing presence. You know, I know there are many times that you catch me being distracted while listening to you talk. Most of the time, I can actually recount the words that you said, but to be honest, I'm probably not hearing what you're actually saying, right?
Right.
You know, there's this interesting verse in James chapter 1, verse 19 that says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And that verse reminds me that how valuable listening is. Not just hearing, but actually really paying attention with patience and care.
Yeah, this is where the 5 years framework is so helpful. It reminds us to shift into the right gear for the right moment. If you're in gear 4, task mode, you might be trying to get things done while your spouse, Lisa, is in gear 2, connect mode and need your full attention.
Right.
This language around gears, in my opinion, provides opportunity for us to understand one another better. For example, your gear 4 and 5 is totally, which is natural to you, is totally opposite of my gear 2 and 3. I can go to those gears, those opposite gears, we go to them very easily. This is a tension point for us.
Right.
Gear 2 is my natural gear. It does not come naturally to you.
No.
And I desire the fullness of my 2 gear.
Right.
That means eye contact, the phone is down, verbal communication, body language that says, I'm listening to you, my bride. I'm listening to you. And honestly, you could probably say the same thing when we are working on a project together and you're in gear 5. That is natural to you.
Yeah.
It is not natural to me. It is a chore to me. And I personally have to manage my expectations of how you present yourself in second gear, and you have to manage your expectations of me when we're trying to lock in and do a project. So not only is it a great tool of going, how do we get in the right gears, but it's a great tool of knowing where your spouse is naturally inclined to and appreciating that and trying to give some respect and empathy in those areas.
Yeah, because just as much as you need me to be fully in gear 2 and eye contact and so forth, it can be frustrating for somebody who, one of their natural gears is 4 or 5, and you're trying to accomplish something and your spouse is taking phone calls and talking to the kids and cleaning the dishes and everything else.
That feels too soon, but I don't know. No, I'm teasing.
I'm not saying it was you necessarily.
No, but it's true though. So it is a tool of awareness,
Yeah,
honestly, is my whole point, and appreciating that and making sure we're ready to lock in that my phone's down when we're in gear 5, because we do work together a lot.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so the fix for me is simple but powerful. Just simply shift into gear 2, give you my undivided attention. It's about being fully present when it matters most, right?
That's right. And when we're not in those places, that we give grace to get there, and we're not defensive when we don't do it right.
Right.
Okay, so this week, try setting aside at least 10 minutes a day to connect in gear 2. No distractions, just focused listening. It could be over coffee, during dinner, or before bed, a walk, whatever works for you. And maybe go back and listen to the episode on 5 gears in season 1, episode 2, for a refresher.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, the second roadblock we want to talk about is assumptions and misunderstandings. Assuming we know what our spouse means or feels without clarifying can be a major roadblock. We think we're mind readers, but what we're really doing is creating misunderstandings. You know, a lot of the conflict happens because of what we call assume-aside, right? We assume something and then it's just totally wrong.
Yeah, you're connecting dots that don't even connect. It's not good.
Right.
Or we're not clear in how we communicate. For
Right.
example, saying, I need your help around the house, but not being specific in what I mean. Leaving you guessing or our spouse guessing of what did we actually need when we said we need help around the house.
Right.
Obviously, this shows up in more complex situations. We were recently working with a couple. They are living in a land of misunderstandings and assumptions. It was so clear to us because we were outside looking in.
Right.
Years of this land dwelling in misunderstanding and assumptions caused a pileup of offense.
Right.
They had established a bad habit of believing the worst about each other in intention. So they were assuming
Right.
that each other meant the worst.
Everything that came out of their mouth.
Every single thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Through the reboot process, we began to help them establish foundational tools to begin to back themselves out of this habit.
Right.
When they realized that they were in it, they could see it as they were talking to us, and then we were able to develop ways that they could back out of this misunderstanding and assumption roadblock. But you know what, James? You know what assume means? Have you ever heard of that? It makes a double S out of you and me.
Put that in there.
That's what it does.
Gosh, you always get me with that kind of stuff. Okay, so, you know, talking about assumptions and misunderstandings, another layer of this roadblock is how it often triggers defensiveness. Actually, defensiveness shows up when one spouse feels unfairly accused or misunderstood, and instead of addressing the issue, their defense mechanism is to push back. And for example, if you say, you know, you never helped me with the dishes, I might respond, that's not true. I just did them last week. Defensiveness can keep us stuck in a cycle of blame and frustration.
Right. Yeah, and that's where tools like impact and intent, which is our go-to tool, and the clear model can help.
Right.
Impact and intent helps us approach these moments with curiosity instead of defensive. So, for instance, instead of reacting, you could say, I hear that you're feeling frustrated. Was it your intent to say, I don't contribute at all? Or are you just overwhelmed right now?
Right.
I know, James, we have tools for everything. I
Right.
just talked to someone. They're like, you and James have tools for all kinds of stuff. And I'm like,
Right.
yes. So I may be over tooling in this moment,
Right.
but in this area of defensiveness, I love this tool I came across of that it's no jading. Jade, and then apostrophe in. That's
Jaden.
But Jade. Do not justify, argue, defend, or explain yourself. When you come to me with something, I have to resist jading,
Right.
justifying, argue, defend, explain myself. I can actually apologize for how the situation impacted you, and it wasn't my intent. And if needed, I may say something like, could I provide some context to that situation?
Right.
Which then that allows me to give maybe some things that happened before that may explain why, but it still doesn't matter. I'm sorry it impacted you that way. So if that makes sense, because defensiveness is such a go-to response in marriage, and so we have to have some tools like intent, impact, and no jading, and then you're going to help us know another tool.
Yeah, that small shift actually creates space for clarity instead of a defensive response, which goes to the clear model, which basically is to clarify, listen, empathize, ask, and respond. That helps us ensure that communication is actionable and constructive. So clarify, start by identifying what you're really feeling and what you need. Vague or generalized complaints like "you never help" can be frustrating for your spouse because they don't specify the problem or provide a path for resolution. Instead, clarify your feelings and pinpoint what you need. For instance, instead of saying "you never help around the house," say something more like, I'm feeling overwhelmed with the housework and I'd really appreciate your support. Just by simply clarifying your thoughts, you help yourself communicate more effectively and avoid unnecessary conflict.
Yeah, and you know what? Even in that, I'm feeling overwhelmed by the housework and I appreciate your support. I actually get specific because I have things that I know that need to be done, and you're not going to mind read them. If you could help me, James, take out the trash, vacuum the floor, and then spray off the back porch, that would be helpful to me.
Right.
It's those three things instead of me thinking you're going to know exactly what I need supported.
Yeah, you got to clarify it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then second thing is you need to listen. Once you've expressed yourself, make space for your spouse to share their perspective. Listening is not about planning a response, but truly hearing and understanding their point of view. You want to maintain eye contact, nod, and use phrases like, I hear you saying that. It sounds like you're feeling. When your spouse feels heard, they're more likely to reciprocate the same understanding, right? Yeah. The third thing about clear is empathize. Empathy is about stepping into your spouse's shoes, even if you don't fully agree. Try to understand their emotions and say something like, I can see how coming home to dishes might feel frustrating after a long day. Empathy actually softens defensive walls and creates a safe space for both of you to express yourselves honestly. And then fourth, ask. Rather than making demands, frame your needs as a request. Asking fosters teamwork and respect. For instance, instead of saying, why can't you just do the dishes for once? Try, would you be willing to take care of the dishes tonight so I can have a break? Right? This actually invites cooperation rather than resistance. Finally, you want to respond in a way that aligns with what your spouse has shared. If they make an effort to or agree to help, express gratitude. Positive reinforcement actually strengthens goodwill and makes your spouse feel valued. For example, thank you so much for stepping in tonight. It really means a lot to me. Responding with kindness and appreciation keeps a focus on connection rather than conflict.
The response in all of these situations really establishes communication moving forward and freedom to be and safety to correspond with each other. So responding is so critical in the next communication you need to have. Scripture also reminds us to focus on building each other up. Ephesians 4:29 says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. I love it. This encourages us to use our words to clarify, affirm, and connect rather than accuse or tear down. So important.
Yeah. So this week, we want to encourage you to practice asking clarifying questions like, can you explain what you mean? Or How did you feel about that? Or when making requests, be specific and direct, right?
Right. Love it. Okay. The third roadblock is emotional escalation. This happens when we let our emotions take over, whether it's snapping in anger, getting defensive, shutting down altogether, or just leaving the whole room and saying, I'm done talking about this.
Yeah. This is one that I have to really watch out for. You say something, I misunderstand or I misinterpret it. Instead of pausing, I react emotionally, which only escalates the tension, right?
And I have my own set of emotions that contribute to poor communication. Yeah. This is where criticism and contempt can rear their heads. Criticism happens when we attack our spouse's character instead of addressing their behavior. For example, instead of saying, I'm frustrated that you forgot to take out the trash, you may say something more critical like this: You're so irresponsible, you never remember anything.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah, there's a big difference. And contempt takes it even further, actually showing up as sarcasm, eye rolling, or belittling comments, right? Contempt can be really damaging because it conveys disrespect and often stems from unresolved resentment, right?
Yeah, it actually is very sad because you can see how these, when we talk about small, smart choices over time
Yeah.
equal success.
Yeah.
Small, poor choices over
Yeah.
time equal, what do you say,
Accumulated disaster.
Here is where we would encourage you to use the tool E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. Let me say it one more time. E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. It reminds us that while we can't control the event, we can control how we respond. If we're feeling critical or contemptuous, we can pause and ask ourselves, what outcome do I want from this conversation? Instead of reacting in anger, we can choose to respond in a way that fosters connection and understanding. And James, often I feel, and if you think about it, when we're feeling any negative feeling, whether it's critical or contemptuous, anger, highly emotional, that's not positive, I feel it certainly sometimes in my body, either in my chest or my throat, which are indicators to me, watch out, Lisa, manage the pause.
Right.
And so you can actually feel this. You may actually get hot, or your back may hurt, or your head may hurt, something like that. But it's a physical indicator that you're about to blow your stack.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why Proverbs 15:1 gives us this practical wisdom. It says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So when we choose gentleness over harshness, and we actually have to pause after the event happens, we can actually de-escalate a situation. The outcome be better with just a gentle word instead of a harsh word. So we de-escalate the situation and create space for a healthier outcome.
Yeah. This feels so elementary and so foundational because it is so elementary. It's so foundational, but these foundational tools actually go right out the door when emotions come
They really
in.
do.
So the next time emotions run high, take a 10-second pause, breathe. And actually that could scare your spouse if you're like, yeah, but breathe, think about the outcome you want and respond thoughtfully. If you catch yourself being critical, reframe it in a soft startup like, I feel frustrated because the trash wasn't taken out. Can we find a solution together?
Okay, the fourth roadblock we want to talk to you about is avoiding or controlling conflict. There are two sides of the spectrum, avoiding conflict or trying to control conflict.
This is going to get messy.
It could be, I don't know. Some people dodge tough conversations altogether while others dominate discussions, turning them into debates about who's right. Both actually can create a lot of tension and disconnection in marriage.
Yeah, let's talk first about the avoidance approach. One way this shows up is through stonewalling. This happens when one person completely shuts down, either by walking away or giving the silent treatment or emotionally withdrawing from the conversation because I'm conquering this. But one of the ways I used to do this younger in our marriage was to pout. I would pout and disconnect from you and maybe punish you all night and creating an atmosphere of tension, of stonewalling.
Yeah.
Very unhealthy, right?
Yeah, stonewalling can sometimes feel like self-protection, right? If you're overwhelmed or afraid of making things worse, it might seem like the safest option is to stop engaging. But the problem is it leaves your spouse feeling unheard or rejected, like you just said, right?
Right.
And the issue stays unresolved.
Yeah, exactly. And stonewalling doesn't always mean someone is trying to be difficult. Sometimes it's a response to feeling emotionally flooded, like you don't have the capacity to handle what's going to happen in the next moment. And I totally resonate with that. Even when I'm maybe pouting, when I used to resort to that, it's just because I didn't know how to move forward.
Yeah. Again, looking at scripture, Romans 12:18 gives us wisdom here. It says, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. What this reminds us is that we have a responsibility to create peace in our marriage, whether by addressing conflict with gentleness or taking a break to process emotions before re-engaging.
So the tool E plus R equals O, event plus response equals outcome, helps us recognize when we're overwhelmed and we choose our response that creates a healthier outcome. For example, instead of stonewalling, you could say, I need a break to calm down. Let's come back to this in 30 minutes. That way you're not avoiding the issue. You're just giving yourself space to process. Sometimes I'll go, can we put a pin in this and get back to it, even maybe tomorrow? But then that is a time that I'm actually willfully making a choice. I'm not going to pout or sulk or be quiet the rest of the evening. I know we're going to get to it the next day.
Right. And then on the other side of that roadblock is controlling conflict. This happens when one spouse or the other dominates the conversation, turning it into a debate about who's right or wrong. It shifts the focus away from resolution and onto winning the argument. And this is probably where I can tend to be strong in our relationship, is I can debate an issue and kind of control the conversation.
Yeah,
right?
and I actually don't access that kind of information and data as well as you do. So you definitely would win a debate if you started it with me. But, James, you've heard of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Right.
Well, in marriage communication, we need to implement the platinum rule.
Ooh, I like that.
Treating your spouse the way they want to be treated. If your spouse needs gentleness during conflict, adapt your tone and approach, even if you're naturally more direct. Or if you prefer directness, don't dance around the issue, just be clear and honest. I like to say be brief, be brilliant, be gone.
That's right. So we want to encourage you this week to notice your approach to conflict. If you're shutting down, try naming what you're feeling and setting the time aside to revisit the conversation. You've heard us talk about the feel wheel. Use the feel wheel to clarify your feelings. If you tend to dominate, pause and ask your spouse for their perspective. Small adjustments like these can build trust and lead to healthier resolution.
I love it. Okay, so the final roadblock is a lack of appreciation and balance. When conversations focus only on problems or critiques, it can feel like there's no room for gratitude or connection. And when we try to tackle too many issues at once, it overwhelms the conversation, making it hard to address anything effectively.
That's right.
1 Thessalonians says it this way, chapter 5:11. Therefore, encourage one another, build each other up, just as in fact you're doing. When you make an intentional effort to affirm and appreciate your spouse, we create an environment where people feel valued.
Gratitude is such a powerful tool, and we need to over leverage it in our marriage relationship. A good rule of thumb in gratitude is a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every critique, share at least 5 genuine, specific compliments. Simple examples of gratitude would be like, I love how thoughtful you are with the kids. I appreciate how hard you're working. Thank you so much for a great dinner. I know you put a lot of effort into those things. So those small pieces of gratitude, leverage gratitude over critique to actually balance it out in a relationship.
I love that. One in counseling session with one of our teenagers in one of their seasons, the therapist said this very same thing, and is that I needed to find more places to celebrate than critique. And I said, but it's really difficult right now. There's not much. And she said, you can find something, and you need to get the microscope out and look for it. So if you're really in a tough time in marriage and you're like, I cannot see it, you can find it. You can find it, but it does need to be genuine.
That's true.
Yeah. So another tool is Myers-Briggs and Enneagram Insights. I love personality assessments like this to help us gain awareness about ourselves and others. And if personality differences are causing tension, these type of tools can help you. For instance, if one of you are task-oriented and the other are people-oriented, you can adjust your communication style to meet right in the middle. If one of you is more thinking and the other is more feeling, then lean into empathy and common ground. This is actually you and I, James.
Yeah.
You're more thinking, I'm more feeling, and we've had to manage this. This is where I personally love the Enneagram as a growth tool for couples. It really helps each spouse to have empathy for the other person. And in our married life, you as an Enneagram 8, I have leveraged that.
Yeah.
Because as a 2, I don't make decisions quickly. I overthink things.
Right.
I'm questioning I have a lot of questions about, is that the right? I just don't have a lot of action where you have a lot of action.
Right.
So I've leveraged that, and I'm going, because you'll say, Lisa, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Right.
And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And then for you, my people side, you definitely lean in and ask for, hey, how could I
Absolutely.
say that? Should you read this email?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you should read this before I send it.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
So this week, as a practical takeaway, we want you to make an effort to notice 5 specific things your spouse is doing well and communicate those. Communicate 5 things that they're doing well. And if you need to tackle a tough issue, keep it focused on one topic at a time. We'd also encourage you to go back and listen to a few of our episodes on the Enneagram. I'm going to post several of those, including the interview we had with Jeff and Beth McCord.
Love it.
About the Enneagram. That will be really helpful, and put those in the show notes. Okay, so there you have it. There are 5 common communication roadblocks and some tools to overcome them. The key takeaway is this: communication is a skill, and with the right mindset and tools, you can break through any barrier. We always say that most couples have good hearts, but bad skills. And so today, hopefully, we gave you some new tools that you can put and build some skills around in the area of communication.
I love that, because skills can be developed.
Right.
Yeah. So remember, it's not about fixing everything at one time. Start with one roadblock that resonates most with you, and focus on small intentional changes. Have a good discussion about that. Be ready to say what you need.
Right.
And not what your spouse needs to do.
That's right.
Over time, those changes will create real momentum in your marriage and create this flywheel we're talking about.
That's right. So thanks for joining us on the Art of Spousing podcast. If this episode helped you, we encourage you to share it with your friends and leave us a review. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the Art of Spousing podcast. Until then,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.